Hey everybody, welcome back. Piscean's based existential philosophy on mortality. Maybe, or just Piscean's based philosophy. Piscean's based existential philosophy. Now, we went over this video yesterday. We did this dissections of individual dimensions in quantum hyperspace on the human puppets dimension and the ontology of categorical species. Make sure to check that out. Like it, comment, subscribe, share. I appreciate all the support that I receive. In this video, I wanted to kind of just walk you through some compiled essays in astrologic anthropology. And you may be asking, well, how does this coincide with, mortality, maybe even philosophy? Existentialism. Possibly even fatalism. And that these are signs of, where I'm at. As a Pisces with, a fucking stellium. And it's just bringing an influx of spiritual dissolution. Right. This is the bones of stories, and I have quite a few essays in this, so I'll show you guys. And as I was saying, what I was trying to get at is astrology and all of those things correlate, as well as anthropology in general. Just human history revolves around astrology, in my opinion, and also anthropology, but other factors as well. This is just what, intrigued me. So, first we'll go over the insight knife preface on method. Every genuine philosophy begins with an instrument, not a weapon, though it may cut, not a scalpel, though it heals. The insight knife is that which severs the patient from the wound, the true from the conditioned, the soul from the story that has been told about it for too long. This collection of essays proceeds from a single premise. Astrology, when stripped of its fortune-telling veneer and approached as a symbolic language, is the original anthropology. It is the study of Humana del Niebla, the mist being, charting our mucky roots in our towering, spiraling potential. It is a forensic science of the spirit, a paleomythology of the present moment. We come bearing this knife not to destroy, but to perform an act of mercy upon the encrusted self, to unfurl the bandages and look upon what has been hidden, the wounds, the gifts, and the profound collective condition that binds us all in its invisible embrace. The bandages are many. They are culture, they are trauma, they are the enforced politeness of a dying social order. They are the old burnt-out paradigms we have They are the old burnt-out paradigms we have been bent into since birth. To unfurl them is to risk seeing what writhes beneath. It is to risk freedom. This is the work. So, psychic archaeology in the poor psyche lands. Well, the psyche is not a clean, well-lit room. It is a tell, an ancient mound of accumulated debris and buried treasure, rising layer upon layer over millennia. The excavator does not arrive expecting order, they arrive expecting strata. This is psychic archaeology. The deepest strata hold the bones of stories, the primordial narratives that shaped our ancestors, the descent of Inanna, the dismemberment of Osiris, the labyrinth and the Minotaur. These are not myths we read, they are myths that read us, that wrote the software of consciousness before we had language to object. Above them lie the layers of personal history, childhood wounds, family myths, the sediment of education and injury. Higher still, the recent deposits of adult life, career, relationship, the accumulated debris of surviving, and finally the topsoil, the thin, vulnerable layer of the present self, exposed to the elements. But the topsoil is thin, and the ground is unstable. We are excavating in the poor psyche lands, territories of the self ravaged by resource extraction. Here, attention has been mined by algorithms until nothing remains but distraction. Emotional resilience has been depleted by trauma until the bedrock shows through. The topsoil of meaning has been eroded by nihilism until nothing will grow. These lands are poor, not because they lack depth, but because their depth has been plundered. The soul has been strip-mined by a culture that knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. What remains is a landscape of psychic scarcity, a place where survival consumes all available energy, leaving nothing for flourishing. In the poor psyche lands, the archaeologist's work is not a luxury, it is an act of salvage. It is a desperate search for soul footing, some bedrock of authentic being, before the ground gives way entirely and the excavator is swallowed by the very pit they sought to explore. The method is simple and terrible. Dig. Dig through the debris of a life. Dig through the imposed narratives, the inherited traumas, the cultural programming. Dig until you hit something that rings true, something that was there before the strip mining began. What you find may not be pretty, it may be broken, it may be a shard of pottery, a fragment of bone, a single coin bearing the face of a forgotten god, but it will be real. And reality in the poor psyche lands is the only wealth that matters. No shitting on people with speech impediments. If you do that, fuck you. The making of the soul, ego lore as survival mechanism. What we call the soul is not a found object. It is not a pre-existing entity waiting to be discovered, like a fossil in the earth. It is a continuous creation, a story we tell ourselves to maintain coherence against the onslaught of the world. This is ego lore. Yes. The ego is the scribe, the keeper of the lore, the one who builds the fortress of identity on the shifting ground of the poor psyche lands. It is not the enemy of the soul, as certain spiritual traditions would have us believe. It is the soul's first line of defense, its ambassador to a hostile world. Consider the lore of any life. I am the one who is abandoned. I am the successful one. I am the one who doesn't belong. I am the healer, the victim, the fighter, the peacemaker. These are not truths in any absolute sense. They are survival strategies that have hardened into identity. They are the stories that worked, that kept the psyche intact through childhood, through trauma, through the long gauntlet of becoming. But the lore is not the truth. It is a necessary fiction. The Jungian psychoanalyst listens for the gaps in the lore, the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the moments when the story falters and something else peeks through. These are the footnotes where a different, older story is trying to break through. They are the return of the repressed, the ghost at the banquet, the detail that doesn't fit. But mother loved me. She always loved me. She just couldn't show it. Same as my father. Even more so with him. Anyways, the gap yawns, the lore trembles. The goal of this work is not to destroy the ego, to leave the psyche defenseless against the wolves of the unconscious. It is to trace the lore back to its source, to understand why it built its walls where it did. It is to ask the question that all archaeology asks: what was the structure built to keep out? In the harder question, what was it built to keep in? For every fortress is also a prison. Every wall that keeps out the invader also keeps in the inhabitant. The lore that protects also confines. The story that makes survival possible also makes freedom impossible. The making of the soul, then, is not the fabrication of something new. It is the patient, painstaking work of distinguishing the lore from the truth, the necessary fiction from the living reality. It is the process of expanding the story until it can hold the fullness of what is, rather than the narrowness of what was once required. The soul is not found, it is forged, and the forge is the gap between the story and the truth. In fact, this is what I mean by this. The natal promise versus universal / collective. Truth. Alright. So, Essay 4 is the elder equation in the world between worlds. Between the conscious ego and the vast unconscious lies a liminal zone, a territory that belongs fully to neither. This is the world between worlds. It is the realm of symbols, of dreams, of synchronicity. It is the place where the personal meets the collective, where the temporal touches the eternal, where the one encounters the many. It is accessed not by will, but by wound, through moments of vulnerability, crises, or creative inspiration when the fortress walls grow thin. These points of access are psychic gates, or, to use another language, ego apertures. The elder equation is a dynamic mathematical relationship between the ego's aperture and the archetypal energy that pours through. It is the calculation that determines whether contact with the numinous will be transformative or destructive, illuminating or annihilating. Consider the variables. Small, rigid aperture, the ego tightly defended, the lore rigidly maintained, admits only a trickle of light. The archetypal energies knock at the gate but find no entry. The result is a defensive personality cut off from the deep sources of meaning, living entirely on the surface of existence, safe, perhaps, but starving. A wide, terrified aperture, the ego shattered by trauma, the lore broken beyond repair, can be flooded and drowned by the unconscious. The archetypal energies pour through like water through a breached dam, overwhelming the fragile structures of the self. This is psychosis. This is the maelstrom. This is the soul drowned in the very ocean that should sustain it. The elder equation seeks the golden mean, an aperture wide enough to receive the light, but structured enough to channel it. Not a fortress, but a vessel. Not a wall, but a channel. The work of the Jungian astrologer is to calculate this equation for an individual, using the birth chart as a map of their potential apertures and the archetypal forces that seek to enter. The planets are not causes, they are correspondences. They are the language in which the elders speak, the symbols through which the unconscious announces itself. When Saturn contacts a vulnerable point in the chart, the elder of structure knocks at the gate. When Neptune transits, the elder of dissolution seeks entry. When Pluto passes over, the elder of death and rebirth demands audience. The question is never whether they will come. They will come. The question is whether the aperture is prepared, whether the ego has done the work necessary to receive the elder without being destroyed by its presence. This is the work of a lifetime. This is the elder equation. This is the art of living in the world between worlds. Right. Essay 5 is the profound collective condition and the subsumed self. While we do not excavate alone, we dig in a crowded field, and the field itself is shaking. The profound collective condition is the shared psychic weather of our era. It is the climate of anxiety that permeates the air we breathe, the pandemics of loneliness that sweep through populations like invisible plagues, the mass migrations of meaning from the sacred to the commodified. To be subsumed by culture is to have the top layer of your ego lore written for you by forces you cannot see and do not consent to. It is to mistake the trending hashtag for a genuine feeling, the corporate brand for an identity, the algorithm suggestion for your own desire. The subsumed self does not know it is subsumed. It believes it is choosing freely, even as its choices are pre-selected by forces whose only interest is its continued consumption. It believes it is thinking, even as its thoughts are echoes of conversations designed to capture its attention. It believes it is fleeting, even as its emotions are triggered by content engineered to provoke predictable responses. This is not conspiracy, it is simply the logic of a system that has learned to mine human attention with the same efficiency that it mines the earth. The poor psyche lands are not an accident, they are the product of extraction. The astrology anthropology of our time examines how planetary transits interact with this collective condition. When Pluto enters Aquarius, it does not just affect individuals, it seismically shifts the tectonic plates of technology, community, and power. It threatens to subsume us entirely into the machine, or conversely offers a chance to dig ourselves out. For the collective condition, like the personal condition, is subject to the great wheel. It has its seasons, its crises, its moments of death and rebirth. The current crisis, the subsumption of the self by the system. It is not the end of history. It is a winter, and winters, however harsh, are followed by springs. The question is not whether the spring will come. The question is what will survive the winter? What will remain of the human when the thaw begins? What will emerge from the long darkness, blinking in the unaccustomed light? The answer depends on who is doing the digging and what they are digging for. Essay 6, we're going over the great wheel and the soul seasons, and the antidote to being subsumed is to remember the wheel. The universe is, above all else, a maker of cycles, all right? I'm sure we know this. From the breath to the seasons to the precession of the equinoxes, reality is rhythmic. It turns, it returns, it moves in spirals that are also circles, in circles that are also spirals. Nothing is linear. Though we experience it that way, everything is cyclical, though the cycles are too large for our short lives to perceive. This is the great wheel. The soul's seasons are the internal experience of this external truth. We do not live in a straight line from birth to death, accumulating experiences like beads on a string. We live in cycles within cycles, daily cycles of waking and sleeping, annual cycles of contraction and expansion, 7-year cycles of development, 30-year cycles of maturation. A Saturn return is a harsh winter, all right? From ages 29 through 30. And that's why we hear the midlife crisis thing. It comes every 29 years, demanding consolidation, forcing us to reckon with what we have built and what we have neglected. It strips away the dead wood, exposes the foundations, freezes the superficial waters so that the only deep currents continue to flow. It is not comfortable. It is not meant to be. It is winter. It is a, very hefty winter. All right. A Jupiter transit is a lush, expansive spring. It brings growth, opportunity, the sense that anything is possible. It opens doors, expands horizons, reminds us that the world is larger than our current circumstances. It is not permanent. It is not meant to be. It is spring. The art of living is the art of recognizing the season and responding appropriately. To plant in winter is to watch your seeds freeze. To hibernate in spring is to miss the growing season. To resist the season, to cling to the structures of a previous cycle, to insist on summer when autumn is clearly arriving, is to ensure that the transition, when it comes, will be violent. Flooding the delta is what happens when one season gives way to the next with overwhelming force. It It is the Aries ingress that ignites the fields, the Cancer full moon that makes the emotional rivers overflow. It can be destructive, washing away the fragile structures built on the floodplain of the ego. But it is also the source of all fertility. The delta soil is made rich by the flood. The nutrients that sustain life are deposited by the very waters that threaten to sweep it away. To live in the delta is to accept this paradox, that destruction and creation are the same force seen from different angles. The great wheel turns, the seasons change, the floods come and go, and the soul, if it is wise, learns to dance in the rain. Essay 7. Endangered species and humanity's mucky root. What is becoming endangered in this late stage of our culture? Late stage of what? Could it be, I don't know, capitalism, tech, late stage poverty? I guess that correlates with capitalism. Late stage looks maxing behavior. The list goes on, honestly, because we just spawned in 2026 where a lot of people are what we would like to call stupid. Some are stupid on purpose, others don't mean to be. Anyways, what is becoming endangered in this late stage of our culture? And I'm going to close my window really quick. It's cold as fuck. Alrighty. So, not the panda, not the polar bear, not the rainforest, the autonomous self. Yes, that's what's becoming endangered. And we saw this for the last several years. I mean, endangered Americans, endangered American civilians, people that were born here. It's just, that's what I'm trying to get at with this. So, the capacity for deep, unstructured reverie is endangered. The ability to sit in silence without reaching for a device is endangered. The unmediated soul, the self that exists before and beyond its representation, is endangered. We are watching the slow extinction of interiority, the gradual replacement of the first-person experience with the third-person performance. Natural selection now operates on the level of psyche and culture. Those who can navigate the flooding delta of information, who can maintain a soul footing in the torrent, who can distinguish the signal from the noise, who can preserve some inner sanctuary amid the outer chaos, are the ones who will adapt. They're the ones whose genes, literal and mimetic, will populate the future. But our adaptation must be rooted in something deeper than mere survival. It must be rooted in humanity's mucky root, the primal, chthonic, earthy core of what it means to be human. We are not angels. We are not data. We are not pure consciousness temporarily inhabiting a meat vehicle. We are beings born of the mud and the stars, compounded of earth and fire and water and air, subject to the same laws that govern the growth of trees and the flow of rivers and the migration of birds. The mucky root is what connects us to this earth. It is the body with its hungers and its pleasures and its inevitable decay. It is the instinct with its ancient wisdom and its dangerous compulsions. It is the dirt under the fingernails, the blood in the veins, the shit and the birth and the death that no amount of spiritual bypassing can transcend. To forget the mucky root is to become weightless. It is to float away on the currents of abstraction, to lose touch with the ground that alone can support genuine flourishing. The weightless self is easily blown away by the first strong wind of ideology, easily subsumed by the first attractive system, easily consumed by the first algorithm that offers it a comfortable cage. Our survival as a species, and more importantly, our flourishing as individuals, depends on remembering the compost from which we grew. It depends on honoring the root, even as we reach for the stars. It depends on accepting that we are always and forever creatures of the mud. In the mud, for all its mess, is fertile. The mud gives life. The mud receives us when we die. The mud is the great equalizer, the great reminder, the great return. Blessed be the mucky root. Without it, we are nothing. Essay 8 is Death Meets the Dying. And we'll switch up the colors really quick. Just to pop in. This is the central koan of the individuation process. It is the riddle that cannot be solved by thinking, only by living. It is the mystery at the heart of all genuine transformation. Death meets the dying. Throughout life, we are the dying, the temporary, the ego-bound, the creature of a single season. We are the ones who will not last, whose thoughts and feelings and experiences are ephemeral as mayflies, here today and gone tomorrow. We are the dying, and we know it, though we spend most of our energy pretending otherwise. Yet we carry within us a seed of death, the timeless, the archetypal, the completed self. This is not physical death, but the death that is also life. The principle of transformation, the force that ends one thing so that another may begin. This is the death that is also the harvest, the death that is also the seed. Death meets the dying at the moment of crisis, at the moment of ego dissolution, at the moment when the walls come down and the old self can no longer be maintained. It is the confrontation with our own limitations, our own mortality, our own shadow. It is the meeting we have been avoiding all of our lives. The appointment we cannot cancel, the date we wrote in the calendar before we were born. Simultaneously and by the same logic, vehicle meets destination. The vehicle is the personality, the specific constellation of traits and tendencies and wounds and gifts that we were given at birth. It is the car we are driving through life with all its quirks and limitations and unexpected strengths. It is not of our choosing, it is simply what we have to work with. The destination is not a place, it is a state of being, the full expression of the vehicle's potential. It is what this particular car, driven by this particular driver on this particular road, can become. It is the completion of the pattern that was seeded at birth. The shock of the journey is that the vehicle becomes the destination. The path is the point. The way you drive the car is where you end up. There is no separate destination waiting at the end of the road. There is only the road and the driving and the gradual realization that the driver and the car and the road are one thing, not three. The vehicle meets the destination when it stops trying to get somewhere else and realizes it has already arrived. Death meets the dying when the temporary self recognizes the eternal self as its own source and ground, when the wave remembers it is the ocean, when the dreamer wakes inside the dream. This is the meeting, this is the destination, this is the death that is also life. We're going to talk about the universe's 7 oceans and the light from the abyss. If the psyche is a planet, the unconscious is its ocean. But this metaphor, like all metaphors, eventually fails. For the unconscious is not one ocean, but many. It is not a single body of water, but a vast interconnected system of seas and straits and hidden depths. The universe's 7 oceans suggest a vaster, more profound cosmology. They represent different dimensions of being, different layers of reality, different modes of consciousness. To navigate them is to undertake a journey without end. To ignore them is to remain forever on the shore. Let's talk about the first ocean, which is the ocean of memory. This is the personal unconscious, the repository of everything we have forgotten, repressed, or simply failed to notice. It contains our personal history, our unfinished business, our buried treasures, and buried wounds. It is the shallowest of the oceans, the easiest to navigate, the most accessible to conscious exploration. Yet even here, there are depths that surprise us. The second ocean is the ocean of the collective. This is the realm of the archetypes, the primordial patterns that structure human experience across all cultures and all times. The mother, the father, the child, the hero, the shadow, the anima, the wise old man, the great mother, the trickster. These are not ideas we invent, they are structures we inherit, the grammar of the psyche itself. The third ocean is the ocean of instinct. This is the animal body, the ancient inheritance of our evolutionary past. It contains the wisdom of the pack, the terror of the predator, the hunger of the hunter, the joy of the mating dance. It is not separate from us, though we often pretend it is. It is the ground of our being, the foundation upon which everything else is built. The fourth ocean is the ocean of affect. This is the realm of emotion and feeling, the weather systems of the soul. It contains joy and grief, rage and tenderness, terror and ecstasy. It is unpredictable, uncontrollable, and absolutely essential. To cut ourselves off from this ocean is to become dry and brittle, to lose the capacity for genuine connection. Alright, the fifth ocean is the ocean of synchronicity. And this is the realm of a causal connection, the mysterious correspondence between inner and outer, between psyche and world. It is where the dream predicts the event, where the symbol manifests in matter, where the meaningful coincidence reveals the underlying unity of all things. It is the ocean that Jung spent his life exploring. The sixth ocean is the ocean of the void. This is the unmanifest, the pure potentiality from which all things arise, and to which all things return. It is empty of all content, yet fully of all possibility. It is the darkness before creation, the silence before the word, the nothing that is also everything. To enter this ocean is to risk dissolution. To avoid it is to remain forever partial. And the seventh ocean is the ocean of light. It's the ground of being, the pure consciousness that underlies and pervades all existence. It is the light that illuminates all other oceans, the awareness in which all experience occurs. It is not separate from us, though we experience it as separate. It is what we are when we are most fully ourselves. To plumb these depths is to risk encountering the abyss, the overwhelming darkness of the unknown, the trauma, the meaninglessness. The abyss is not one of the oceans. It is the shadow side of all of them, the danger that lurks in every depth. It is the fear that we will be swallowed, destroyed, annihilated by what we find. But the light from the abyss is the profound truth that the darkness is not empty. It is the womb of all future possibility. The insight gained from the depths is the only light potent enough to illuminate the poor psyche lands. The treasure is hidden in the darkness. The pearl is at the bottom of the sea. To descend is to risk everything. Not to descend is to lose everything. Which one would you like to choose? Risk or lose? Alright. Our 10th essay is The Gifts of Old Mother Death. We know she comes for us all in the end, but she also comes in the middle and at the beginning. She comes whenever something must end so that something else may begin. She is not the reaper, she is the midwife. These are the gifts of Old Mother Death. Her first gift to us is perspective. Because why? Well, when death stands at your shoulder, the trivial falls away, the argument you are having, the slight you are nursing, the possession you are coveting, all of it shrinks to its proper size. Death reminds us what matters. She's the ultimate reality check, the final editor of our priorities. The second gift is simplicity. Death strips away the unnecessary. She powers life down to its essentials: love, connection, meaning. In her presence, complexity dissolves. The elaborate structures we have built, the careers, the reputations, the carefully curated identities, reveal themselves as the scaffolding they always were. The building itself is something else entirely. The third gift is the end of illusion. Death is the great realist. She does not care about your self-image, your carefully constructed persona, your meticulously maintained denials. She sees through all of it, straight to the bone. In her gaze, illusion cannot survive, and while this is terrifying, it is also liberating. To be seen completely is to be freed from the exhausting work of hiding. Old Mother Death presides over the ultimate incubator, the life-death life force, is the triple goddess at the heart of existence, the one who gives birth, the one who takes life, the one who gives birth again. She is the cycle personified, the rhythm made manifest, the turning of the great wheel in human form. We enter the incubator, a depression, a crisis, a Saturn return, a diagnosis, a loss, and must die to our old self. In the darkness of that womb, we are broken down into our constituent elements. Everything that was not essential dissolves. Everything that was false is also exposed. Everything that could not survive the heat falls away. If we can bear the heat, if we can stay present in the darkness, if we can trust the process even when it feels like, destruction, we eventually emerge, reborn into a new life. The incubator becomes the cradle. The death becomes the birth. The end becomes the beginning. The incubator is the crucible where the elder equation is recalculated, where the ego lore is rewritten, where the soul is forged anew. It is not optional. It's not something we can avoid by being clever or spiritual or well defended. It comes for everyone in its own time, in its own way. The only choice is whether we enter it consciously or dragged in screaming, whether we cooperate with our own transformation or resist until resistance is futile, whether we receive the gifts or curse the giver. Old Mother Death waits. She is patient. She has all the time in the world. And when she comes with gifts. Astrology forensics in the bones of stories. Well, every birth chart is a crime scene. Something has happened here. Something is always happening here. The task of the astrological detective is to examine the evidence and reconstruct the story. This is astrology forensics. The planets are the suspects. Each one brings its own motives, its own methods, its own signature. Mars leaves a trail of assertion and aggression. Venus leaves a pattern of connection and value. Saturn leaves a structure of limitation and responsibility. The aspects between them are the interactions, the alliances, the conflicts, the complicities. The houses are the locations. Where did it happen? In the realm of relationship, in the domain of career, in the territory of the unconscious. The signs are the manner of the crime, the style, the flavor, the quality of the energy expressed. The forensic astrologer does not ask what will happen, they ask what has happened, what is happening now, what pattern is being enacted, and how can it be understood. But forensics is only the first step. Deeper still lies astrologic paleomythology. This is the practice of asking, which ancient story is being reenacted in this life? Which myth provides the template for this particular pattern of suffering and growth? Which god or goddess, which hero or monster, which tragedy or comedy is playing out in the theater of this single existence? Is this person living out the Persephone myth, the abduction into the underworld, the forced descent, the eventual emergence transformed Is this the story of Inanna, who descends voluntarily, is hung on a hook, and must be rescued by the very forces she thought she had left behind? Is this the Oedipus myth, the search for identity that leads inexorably to the discovery of a truth too terrible to bear? The hero who solves a riddle but cannot solve himself. Is this the Dionysus myth, the ecstasy and the dismemberment, the wild liberation and the terrible price? The god who tears apart and reunites, who drives mad and makes whole? The chart reveals the bones of stories, the underlying skeletal structure of the myth that the flesh of the life will hang upon. It is not deterministic, it is not fate in the crude sense of an unchangeable script. It is more like a deep pattern, a gravitational field, a tendency that will express itself one way or another. The question is not whether the story will play out. It will. The question is whether we will play it out consciously or unconsciously, as tragedy or as comedy, as victims of fate or as co-creators of meaning. The bones are given, the flesh is ours to make. There we go. So, Essay 12, the soul artists and the unfurling. The goal of this work is to help build a towering column of a spiraling humanity, a collective monument to our conscious evolution. Each individual is a unique facet of this column, a single stone in an architecture that spans generations. The column does not rise in a straight line, it spirals, returning again and again to the same themes at higher and higher levels. The architects of this column are the soul artists. They are not necessarily painters or poets, though they can be. A soul artist is anyone who has done the work, who has excavated their poor psyche lands, faced old Mother Death, navigated the 7 oceans, and returned with a piece of the light from the abyss. Their life itself becomes their medium, their relationships, their work, the ordinary detail existence. All of it is material for the ongoing creation of meaning. The soul artist does not create art about life, they create life as art. Every choice is a brushstroke, every encounter is a collaboration, every difficulty is an opportunity to deepen the composition. Their task and ours is to unfurl the bandages. To unwrap the mummified self that has been preserved by culture, by trauma, by fear, to reveal the raw, living, breathing being beneath, to let it stand naked and unashamed in the light. The bandages are many. They were applied for good reasons, to protect the wounds, to hold the broken pieces together, to keep the vulnerable self from further injury, but they have long since served their purpose. Now they only bind, now they only constrict, now they prevent the very healing they were meant to enable. Unfurling the bandages is not easy. The air hurts when it first touches exposed flesh. The light is too bright. The vulnerability is terrifying. But beneath the bandages is not a wound, as we fear. Beneath the bandages is life, pulsing, vital, unmediated life. Beneath the bandages is the soul waiting to be seen. The soul artist does not create the soul. They simply remove what has been hiding it. They do not add, they subtract. They do not build, they reveal. This, of course, is the work, the art, and the unfurling. Essay 13 on Reject Hill and Solitude Mountain. The path of the soul artist leads inevitably to 2 landmarks. They are not optional, they are not detours, they are required stops on the journey toward genuine selfhood. Our first stop, Reject Hill. This is the place where you are cast out by the collective for refusing to be subsumed. It is the hill of the scapegoat, the heretic, the one who will not conform. It is where you are sent when you stop playing the game, when you stop pretending, when you stop performing the version of yourself that the culture demands. Reject Hill is not comfortable. It is lonely. It is cold. The wind blows hard up there, and there is no shelter. But from Reject Hill, you can see something you could not see before. The shape of the cage you are living in. The bars that look like freedom from inside are clearly visible as bars from outside. Reject Hill is the price of authenticity. It is what you pay for the right to be yourself, and it is worth every penny. On to our second stop, which is Solitude Mountain. This is the lonely peak where you must confront yourself without the distractions of the world. No relationships to hide in, no work to lose yourself in, no entertainment to numb you, just you in the silence and the vast, empty sky. Solitude Mountain is where you meet yourself, not the self you present to others, not the self you wish you were, but the self you actually are. It is where you face your demons, your doubts, your deepest fears. It is where you discover what you are made of. These are not punishments, they are initiations. From these heights, you can see a profound truth. The ego's fault lines, its deep insecurities and traumas, may fracture the personality, but they won't cross the ether. They cannot touch the soul's essential, interconnected nature. The wound is real, the trauma is real, the damage is real, but it is not the final truth. Beneath the fault lines, beyond the fractures, there is something that was never broken. Something that was there before the wounding and will be there after the healing. Something that cannot be touched by anything that happens in time. The fault lines are in the ego, not the soul. They are in the vehicle, not the destination. They are in the dying, not in death. This is the view from Solitude Mountain, and this is what Reject Hill reveals. This is the gift of difficult terrain. Toil in different landscapes. Well, this is the double helix of the ethical life. These two strands wound together form the DNA of genuine spiritual development. Separate them and nothing grows. Integrate them and life flourishes. The first strand, toil in difficult inner landscapes. This is the work of excavation. It is facing the shadow, processing the grief, integrating the complexes. It is sitting with the pain you would rather avoid. It is feeling the feelings you would rather numb. It is thinking the thoughts you would rather suppress. It is the slow, patient, unglamorous work of becoming conscious. No one sees this work, no one applauds it, no one gives you a certificate for completing it. It happens in the dark, in the quiet, in the spaces between. It is the work of a lifetime, and it is never finished. The second strand is toil in and for the world. This is the work of engagement. It is activism, healing, creating, loving. It is showing up for others even when you are tired. It is contributing your gifts even when you doubt their value. It is building, teaching, serving, connecting. It is the work that the world sees and sometimes rewards. The insight gained on Solitude Mountain must be brought back down. The treasures excavated from the poor psyche lands must be put to use. The gifts received from Old Mother Death must be given away. One without the other is either spiritual bypassing or burnt-out activism. To toil only in the inner landscape is to become self-absorbed, cut off from the flow of life, irrelevant to the suffering of the world. To toil only in and for the world is to become exhausted, depleted, hollowed out by giving what you do not have to give. All right. The integration of both is the pair of the elder. The elder is not necessarily old in years, though they often are. The elder is one who has done the work, both inner and outer, and has something to offer because of it. The elder is one who has climbed Solitude Mountain and returned to the village. The elder is one who has been rejected and has learned that rejection is not the end. The elder toils in both landscapes because both landscapes are home. The elder knows that the inner and the outer are not two, but one, that the world is in the self and the self is in the world, that to heal one is to heal the other, and to neglect one is to damage both. This is the double helix, this is the toil, this is the way. Alright, we're going to close up with Essay 15, Natural Ways in Old Burnt Out Paradigms. We long for natural ways. We hunger for natural depths. Beneath all the sophistication, all the technology, all the carefully constructed identities, there's a yearning for something simpler, something older, something more real. This longing is not nostalgia. It is not a desire to return to some pre-technological Eden that never existed. It is a desire for alignment, for a life that is in rhythm with the great wheel, for a self that is rooted in humanity's mucky root, for a way of being that is not constantly at war with our own nature. But we are continually bent into old, burnt-out paradigms. These are the outmoded belief systems, the corporate structures, the political ideologies that have lost all life-giving power. They are the religions that no longer inspire, the careers that no longer fulfill, the relationships that no longer nourish. They are the forms that have survived long after the life has departed, the shells that remain after the creature has moved on. Why do we stay in them? Why do we continue to inhabit structures that are killing us? Because they are familiar, because they are safe, because everyone else is in them, because we do not know what would replace them, because the thought of leaving is more terrifying than the thought of staying. And we are stifled by an enforced political correctness that, in its most superficial form, polices the surface while leaving the depths untouched. This is not the genuine sensitivity that arises from compassion. This is a performance of virtue that flattens the textured reality of human experience into a bland, acceptable pace. It flattens the spicy truth of our desires. It flattens the somber dignity of our grief. It flattens the regal responsibility of our own individuation. It flattens everything into a gray uniformity that pleases no one and serves nothing. The call of this work is to break free of these burnt-out paradigms, to be rough-showed over the shallow conventions that bind us, to reclaim the spicy, the somber, the regal, all the flavors of genuine human experience that have been suppressed into the name of a false politeness. This is not a call to cruelty or carelessness. It is a call to authenticity. It is a call to risk being real in a world that rewards performance. It is a call to live the questions posed by the stars, to dig for the bones of our own stories, and to build, stone by stone, that towering column of a conscious, spiraling humanity. The burnt-out paradigms are burning out for a reason. They have served a purpose. They have taught us what they had to teach. Now it is time to leave them behind. The natural ways are waiting. The natural depths are calling. The great wheel turns, and a new season is beginning. And then I have the epilogue here. Which is the mist being's return. We began as humana del niebla, a being of mist, undefined and searching. We emerged from the fog of potential with no clear shape, no fixed form, no certainty about who we were or where we were going. Through the toil, through the archaeology, through the meetings with death and the immersions in the seven oceans, we began to condense. The mist formed droplets, the droplets formed a stream, the stream found its course. We do not become solid, static things. We do not become rocks, unchanging and impervious. We become a living, flowing body of water, carving our own canyon through the poor psyche lands, bringing life wherever we go. The canyon is the shape of a life fully lived. It is the trace we leave behind, the mark of our passage, the evidence that we were here. It is not who we are, it is what we have done. Who we are is the water, the living, flowing, ever-renewing current of consciousness that moves through the landscape of experience. We return to the mist, but now we know it as our native element. We know that mist is not nothing, it is everything in its most potential form. We know that the boundaries between self and world, between inner and outer, between human and cosmos are not solid walls, but permeable membranes. And we know the stars from which we came. The stars are not distant objects separate from us. They are our source and our destination. The same fire that burns in them burns in us. The same patterns that govern their movements govern our lives. The same light that travels across billions of years to reach our eyes is the light that illuminates our deepest darkness. We are the mist being returned to itself. We are the story returned to the teller. We are the question returned to the questioner. And the answer always is more life, more depth, more love, more consciousness, more of the spiral turning and turning, rising and rising, toward a light that has no source because it is the source of everything. The mist being returns to the mist, but the mist is different now, and it has been lived in. It has been shaped by a life it carries within its formless form, the trace of a journey, and the journey continues. Always, the journey continues. I'll see you in my next video with peace and love. Piscean out.